around this level based on a population basis. So to answer your question in simple terms, you can use population to influence or determine where you set your policy. But you've got three options: free market, unlimited number, unlimited machines, unlimited venue. You've got possibly an ability to set the status quo, which is the middle ground as of 2003, and hold the current number. Or alternatively, you have a sinking lid policy.
Councillor Glenmore, did you want to say something? Thank you.
Taking that answer then, you talked about status quo, but we have actually also said that our policy is going to have three venues and therefore work towards that rather than a sector which made it an active reduction policy rather than a sinking lid that people actually sold out themselves. We actually couldn't go down, my understanding, we couldn't go down from less venues and say, hey, we're going to close 3 venues to get to our number. So a sinking lid was, if they close, we don't have to replay.
Natural attrition is really because we only grant licences by way of site setback. So as of 2003, we had an existing situation where there were operators. So we couldn't take away someone's right to operate.
So my question to Madam Chair is, when Mr Barrett says we'll decide upon a manageable number, we actually couldn't do that because if we decided our manageable number was 100, we actually couldn't enforce that manageable number. So that second part of this, as I define upon a manageable number, he's really talking about maintaining status quo of 178 rather than define another number that we could drag out of the year. So I think as we're replying, that sentence is beyond our capability.
Thank you. Councillor Bell.
So simply with our sinking lid policy that we could end up with none. We could have decided to close down and we couldn't have any more sort of subsequent. So we can't say sinking to what just we couldn't actually sink it until we got to a set number and then unsink it.
At any 3-year period, council can decide, let's say natural attrition was greater and the community now were being disadvantaged, they didn't have the opportunity to conduct entertainment like class 4, you can do a reverse of the policy allowing it. So it's every 3-year cycle, council can change.
But we can't skip it.
Thank you.
I think, as Councillor Bell raised that, when we discussed the sinking lid before, we were cognizant that we were at 7.9 and the national average of that, and the discussion that took place then was we would have a sinking lid until we got close to the national average, and at that stage
4.5.
So when that became that, the council would then, we could well resolve and say we've got to the national average and we're about average rather than being so high.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yes, I just wanted to say that Waikato hasn't got pokie machines in the near vicinity. So, it's a bit difficult for people to say, well, the money's coming back into the community when possibly the money that's going out is a different community, such as Taupara. That's where the money's coming from, and going to an area where there are less likely to be people using pokie machines. So arguing that, organisations are getting the money back, it's not always the same sort of area. Yes, you're looking a bit confused.
Yeah, I am. I guess I was looking at the South Waikato, so we're actually micro.
I know.
The South Waikato.
If we say the South Waikato, it's perhaps a little bit not quite accurate that the people who are spending the money are getting the money.
Fair enough, your comment. All right. So that's any more further comments then on submission 1. Let's go to submission 2, which is Arthritis New Zealand. And Arthritis New Zealand was concerned about reduced funding as well, and they opposed the sinking lid policy. they think that it directly opposes, yeah.
So they say in the third to last paragraph, they say they believe a balanced view is required. They don't believe in a single bid policy, but they don't tell us what that alternative is. Balance, what the balanced view is. Well, I'm unable to see it.
All right, thank you. Any other comments about that? The next that we didn't have. New Zealand Community Trust.
I'm going to leave it here.
I think that what was presented, isn't it?
The number of New Zealand Community Trust.
That's the only other one I was thinking, yeah.
But
And please help me, oh yes, thank you. The submission 13, hang on, I was getting my right here. Submission number 13, which was Pub Charities, and it's on page 75, we'll go to that one. And it was from Graham and Wolf. Submission 13, and they don't support the sinking lid policy either. They've made a recommendation that council cap the number of machines and venues. They decide that the number at the moment is optimal and capping it so that future community funding is not eroded. That was their essence of their submission. They also suggested that council have a greater auditing role to ensure that there are systems in place to stop problem gambling. Are there any further comments about that submission?
Well, if we have a look at the recommendations, what I noted was say, so protecting cat problem gamblers is the objective of the policy, then council could also check adequate processes and systems are in place to assist those who are afflicted.
Well, that's, yeah.
I hardly see that as being the place of council. Never even thought it would have been the place of council and under current local government legislation, it's even less so.
Sorry, Vietnamese, because you were...
Oh, it's on page 79,
Yep.
it's a recommendation.
Okay, thank you. But that's that role of the community health officer that they were talking about. One of the submitters mentioned that.
That's right.
That would be that role.
And that's another issue from this at this stage,
Yeah.
because that's a letter from council.
Yeah.
All right, are there any other questions or comments about that submission? Okay. The other one is the community trust one, and have you got that page? Sorry, from Sally Ann Hughes, who was going to present. Page 49. 39? 49. Thank you, 49.
Yes.
And that's the community trust believes that the South Waikato will lose out on the funding that gaming machines currently provide. Alright, so they wish the current number of machines at the moment, which is 178, remain, even though, as they say, it equates to 7.9 machines per 1,000 head of population, when in the South Waikato, when the national average is 4.5. Are of the view that the rate of problem gambling in the South Waikato appears to be relatively low. So that's their comments. Are there any comments from anybody else here?
Madam President.
Yes.
A question to Mr. Anderson, that a predicted identity of 7.9 to an actual average of 4.5, which is the higher, certainly a community rate. If we continue to have a decline in population, as the Department of Statistics has suggested, if we keep what we have or even at present, do I therefore logistically expect that our machine density will be increase higher than 7.9 per head population because our population is falling and obviously the number of machines isn't.
It's a difficult question to
Statistics have suggested that by 2025 our population could be around 18,000. If we had the same sort of machines, you know, our density actually could be higher.
Admittedly, the population is trending as a decreasing, but I probably suspect that there will be an alignment between the number of venues operating at the same time. For instance, the Oxford has not been viable, so it's closed. If there's an assumption or a parallel between declining population and declining patronage and use, then there may well be other venues that close down. So I couldn't answer your question.
Thank you. Right, I think that's the only other one that we didn't have a presenter for. Okay, so moving on now to start into the deliberations. You've heard all the submissions. You've also got in front of you, and I'll just pass that to, and it's the private members bill. That's the gambling harm reduction amendment bill. It's been taken into government, back into government, and there's a report here that Mr. Anderson's going to talk to, that we've actually just received.
Probably about, council may remember, at around 2011, 2012, MP Flavel introduced the private members bill because he was concerned about gambling, particularly class 4 gambling. He suggested at that time that he quite radical changes to the Act, and in summary, he thought that the proceeds from class 4 gambling should be distributed by way of TAs. That would be more equitable than the current gaming trust. There were one or two other issues that he had, but in summary, local government looked at that and thought it was not a core function of council. There was a conflict of interest, and local government wholeheartedly rejected it. It was a poorly written bill, and it had to be rewritten. So over the last 2 years and thereabouts, the Labour Party, the Maori Party and National have obviously been talking. They've found some middle ground, and they've twinked the new bill. The new bill that's been twinked is probably a bit of a compromise. One of the issues really is about inequity of the distribution of monies. Councillors will be aware that the legal minimum of distribution is that 37.12%. There are some community trusts that have minimal overhead, so they distribute a lot better than 37%. The other thing too is with the distribution is that it's hard to control where the distribution goes, because there are national bodies that may well be located in, say, Auckland, like the Air Ambulance. We don't necessarily have an Air Ambulance down here, or the Heart Foundation head office is in Auckland, and accordingly there's indirect allocation to some small territorial authorities. The new bill is suggesting that first and foremost the new Act will have assigned regulations, so it will go from, the noting that it will go from 37.12% upwards of 40 to 42%. We haven't quite resolved that. But also a much better alignment is going to be required about where the money comes from will go back into that community. So that's really a sort of a nutshell of where we are at with this latest Flavel private members bill. I haven't personally seen the bill, but in my communications with Internal Affairs, that's in the summary. So there is moves afoot to amend the Gaming Act 2003 deal.